Have you ever struggled with pain, heartache, and disappointment? Wondering, is this all there is? Then this podcast is for you. Get ready for inspiration to discover your own true purpose-driven success with your host, Denise Hansard.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Is This All There Is? Your path to success, fulfillment, and happiness. Hi, I'm Denise Hansard, your host. And as you can see, I have someone with me today. We're going to have a conversation. Stella Scott. Stella, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Where to start? I'm in Sweden. I am Swedish American. My father's American. But I do consider myself to be very European. So when I studied in New York in my youth, I realized, oh, I'm so European. It's like ridiculous. But I am also very interested in the US. So that is like my ancestry, where I'm coming from. I'm a coach and a Gestalt therapist and an astrologer, and I'm also an opera singer.
Oh,
and that
I didn't
is like,
know that.
You didn't know that? Okay.
I know that.
Kind of a unusual combination. So, but I have worked with women in leadership positions, creating like a support system around them when life has been in crisis and they still have been they must lead. And that can be really challenging if something is disrupting your life. So you feel like, I don't know what to do or where to go. And so that's what I have been providing for that.
So listeners, if you're hearing her, you understand why Stella and I kind of connected. We get each other. And of course, I love the European aspect of you and everything. And I didn't know you were an opera singer. So one day you'll have to sing to me. But Stella and I keep in touch. And the last time we were talking, Stella, you made a comment at the end of our conversation. And I said, oh, I don't even want to get into that right now, but I want to get into it on my podcast. And here's what she said. There's no such thing as self-destructive behavior. I'm going to say that one more time. There's no such thing as self-destructive behavior. And yet, and I paused on that, and I've been thinking about it since we last talked, and I want to hear your view on it, because most people think self-destructive behavior, addictions, obsessiveness, all of those type of things, that's self-destructive behavior. And yet you're saying there's no such thing as that. Tell me why. What?
When I got out of my training to become a Gestalt therapist, that's a 4-year training, I started to work with people. A lot of them came from the 12-step programs. So that means that they had been on drugs, heavily on drugs, and they all came with a very severe story of abuse, sexual abuse, incest, physical abuse, growing up under circumstances that are just horrifying. And what I realized doing this incredible work with these incredibly brave and how should I call it? It's like the capacity for human to survive impossible things is like totally amazing. And from that work, I realized that whatever we do to get by is a way to survive. And it can look very destructive, and it becomes very destructive, but the root cause is always survival. So when the child starts to do something, it's because it's trying to cope with a situation that is uncopable.
Yes. Okay.
And you hide things and you push things away, you pretend everything's okay, but then it's still in your system, it's in your physical system, it's in your energy field. And from there, you try to handle what's going on. And that will eventually lead you to overeating, sexual misconduct, drugs, also like being a workaholic. I mean, it can look fine on the surface, but being a workaholic is being a workaholic.
Yeah.
So all those behaviors are always rooted in, how do I get by? How do I survive this? How do I handle myself with all this angst, with all this pain, with all this grief and sorrow and wrath and all of that? And then that you find something or many things. And if you don't deal with it and work on it, you will go from one addiction, let's say alcohol, to the next, which is cigarettes, and then you stop that, and then you will go to food and religion.
Yeah. Or you may go to being overly exercising, to where that's all you do. And yeah, anything.
All that, shopaholic, all of that.
Yeah.
So you bounce back and forth, but you have to deal with it. You have to own your own pain. But whatever you do, it's about survival. And so I have the deepest respect for anyone who's going through that. So when I hear people say, I'm sorry, I'm on a rant here, I'm on a soapbox. When I hear people talk about, that my self-destructive behavior, and I have this voice in my head that is telling you all these horrible things, and that's because you're trying to survive something. You're getting a voice to become louder than the other stuff.
Okay, so I have so much I want to say about this, and I'm going to try to keep it down. So I now get what you mean by there's no such thing as self-destructive behavior. That's our judgment that we put upon ourselves. When in essence, what I'm hearing you say is we're just trying to survive.
Yes.
And from that survival to thrive in the best way we can. And sometimes the way it comes out can be a destructive behavior mechanism.
Yes.
To ourselves and to others, and basically to our body, if that's the case. I mean, and you could look at people like, who was it? George Burns, who smoked a cigar every day of his life up until he lived to 100 or whatever like that. And it never impacted him. So there could be a whole nother discussion about mind over matter and physicality and what we create in our life. This makes so much more sense to me now on what you're saying, because switching it from being criticalness, judgment, debasing ourselves, when it's kind of like I tell people, I said, look, in that moment, whatever happened to you, you did the best that you could with what you had at that moment.
Exactly.
So that whole survival mechanism. Oh, that's interesting. I love that. That's a great way to reframe.
And that will also create more self-compassion.
Yeah, yeah. So now it gets into, so here's the thing, and I'm going to say it, is that a way of giving ourselves a break or an excuse?
No, not at all.
Okay.
For me, that is a way to telling the truth, to finally tell the truth. And when you tell yourself the truth, and that can be so painful, because if you have elevated somebody like a parent onto a pedestal, and the real story about that parent is a painful story of abuse. But to survive that, you will put it up there. Oh, it's all my fault. I should have done this. I did that. Da-da. So when I say the truth to myself, my mother was not a good parent. She was not a loving parent. That is so painful, but it does not give you a break to do whatever. It's just telling you, this is why. This is the reason. Because I have not been able to handle my mother or my father or my uncle or my brother or teacher or whatever it was. Especially if other people had been part of that system, the family secret system.
Yes.
And if you're a small child, you are at the bottom of the hierarchy.
Yeah.
And to get yourself out of that and say that I am as valuable as they are. And a very common excuse that people come with is they did the best they could. And what I say then is it wasn't enough.
Okay, now that's where. Okay, go ahead.
The reason it wasn't enough is because they have not been dealing with their secret.
All right, so I want to make sure that our listeners understand this, because for me, and this is the way I believe in what I said, the person who is dealing with it and did what they could, they did what they could.
Yes.
Not being enough was the system as a whole. With the outside factors is what I hear you saying, not dealing with their own things. Not the child, not the person who is just trying to survive.
Not the child.
Okay, I just wanted to get that clarity out there, because I was like, what? Because we don't want to put, if you're in a situation like that, and I have no clue about it, and does not matter the age or anything like that, you do what you can with what you have, and you get
Yes, yes,
better each and every time. Our
yes,
whole system of how to deal with this issue, we're not doing enough as a community, as a tribe, as a
yes.
nation, whatever you want to call it. Yes, definitely. Okay. Whew. I was thinking, oh, she's going off the rails here. I can't deal with this.
And this, when I say this, this usually does evoke a lot of, it's provocative. I know it's provocative.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we have this idea or this storyline going through society. And the reason the storyline is going through society is because most people are completely liberated from their own story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of talk about, we have to protect the children and why we're the grown. Yeah, but if you are not yourself on your own inner child's side, you cannot be on small children like they're small now, because your inner child is fighting for its life still.
Yeah.
And if you are grown up like a judge or a police or whatever, and your inner child is fighting for its life, it will project whatever to other grown-ups and children.
Yes.
And this is why the process is so painfully slow, and why we're not. I know people will be provoked by what I'm saying, but I stand by it 100%, and it's getting stronger every day. And I have done this work for 30 years.
I love it. I love it. I love it. We could go on and on about this, and I like to keep it kind of condensed because we don't want to just totally turn people off, but this is a provocative conversation, and I love it. We'll probably come back to this at another time. What I do want you to explain to people is, what is Gestalt therapy?
Gestalt therapy is, that's another.
Yeah, just keep it simple.
Yeah, I'll do my best. It's more than talk therapy. It's a therapy that is very much centered in the now and in the relationship between the therapist and the client.
Yeah.
So in that conversation or in that relationship, you can work with all kinds of different techniques. You can talk, of course, but you can also draw, or you can walk, or you can, there's so many things you can do, but that relationship is so important, because me as the therapist needs to be congruent with all of me for you to be able to be mirrored back. And therefore, it's 4 years, but the first 2 years, your own process is at the center. You have to work through your own process.
Yes.
And after 2 years, you will be evaluated by both your teachers and your study mates. And this is not something you can do right after like school. You have to be at least 25 when you start.
Yes.
And most people are in their 40s when they start going through it. So I was very young. But this thing of like having to work through your own stuff is necessary, because you cannot go out there and be afraid of your client's stuff.
Yes.
And that was it. That like very, very short. It's 4 years, so I'm just condensed to 3 minutes.
I've heard of it before. I've heard of the training, and I know how in depth it is. And I just wanted to be able to have the listeners to understand it. So
yes,
we're going to tie this up, but tell me, or tell our listeners, how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to reach out to you?
The best way is LinkedIn. Stella Scott, the Queen Coach. And it's not because I am the queen. I'm a queen, but so are you. Everyone is their own queen. And I help women to become their own queens in their own lives. So Stella Scott, the Queen Coach on LinkedIn. Or if you're interested, you can also download my app, The Cosmic Strategies.
Say the app again. Cosmic Strategy.
Cosmic Strategies. You can find it on App Store, and you can find it on Google Play. Yeah. So that's a way also to get in connection with me.
Okay, sounds great. And guys, we'll put it down in the description so that you have it. So Stella, thank you so much. I'm glad that we were able to talk about this and to be able to share it with the listeners. I appreciate that. So that's all we have for today on Is This All There Is? And I'm Denise, your host, reminding you to just own your worth, guys. Stay successful, stay happy, and stay fulfilled.
So that's it for today's episode. Head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review on iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a $15,000 private VIP day with Denise Hansard herself. Be sure to head on over to isthisallthereispodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Denise's gift and join us on the next episode.